Hey, folks! Thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. We're all just chilling here right now. I'm hanging with my bro, Holland and I, and we're gonna just chit chat and try to be upbeat and happy no matter how this turns out. You have to remember always know the people you know, make sure you know them very well, and with that being said, grab a seat on my big orange couch. Grab a coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation, whatever your fill is. And with that being said, welcome, Holland. How's everything going tonight, brother?
Well, it's hectic. Information is flying up the horn left and right, conflicting, confirming, denying, affirming. I don't know, but it's very hectic. What we're seeing today is the first demonstration of the future that we have in a Biden administration, if indeed he does swear in. And like I was just conceding until Trump concedes. All right. But, anyways, if Biden swears in, we're seeing the first wave. We're seeing the crackdown on free speech, the crackdown on online free speech, maneuvered and engineered by big tech, who are acting in cohorts with the Chinese Communist Party, who they've been in business with for the past 2 decades, restricting the free speech in that country. I mean, Google reports people who make inflammatory criticisms about the government to the Chinese government. And those people are snatched up, tortured, interrogated, sometimes killed for that. And Google reports on that. And that model is being imported to the United States. We're seeing that today. Parler was shut down. Gab is facing trouble. AR15.com, the largest firearms website in the world, had to go to backup because their servers got shut down. That is just the first taste. And what I must say is that the restriction of free speech platforms is going to lead to the criminalization of free speech. That's not a prophecy or a prediction. That's just how it works, because they're using the Chinese communist model. And in China and in communist China, there is no free speech allowed. You go to jail for criticizing the government, for criticizing the powers that be, for criticizing the corporations who are acting in cahoots with the government. You go to jail for that. And sometimes you're tortured and sometimes you're killed for that. And they are implementing that model here in the United States. This was a very scary day in American history, seeing what is happening. Using a monopoly, when you have big tech giants conspiring to destroy competition, that is called a monopoly. And monopolies are illegal in this country. Not legal, illegal. So it's been a very interesting day. Just the first taste of the week ahead of us, I can only assume. And things are getting weird. What do you think?
I think the same thing. I think what you mentioned was Dragonfly. That's Google's creation. Remember when Google used to
Yep.
say, do no evil? What they do, they helped China to do evil. And notice they took that logo off everything they do now. That was the big
They
thing.
removed it from their credo. They removed
Yes.
it from their code of ethics.
And everybody forgets when they did that. That was under Eric Schmidt, their old CEO. And I always tell everybody, look to his roots. Schmidt. Eric Schmidt. Uh, those folks came from Eric Honecker and Eric Milke. And that's just during the era. Just like, here's the funny thing. A former FDJ slash Stasi informant who's a physicist who actually runs Germany. It actually shocked me on this level. I'm going to be very clear. Angela Merkel said, this is problematic today. She said, what's happening in the U.S. with the suppression of speech, where she has suppressed the German people's speech was a problem.
Well,
And
even despots fear the power of a private corporation, international corporation, to cut off the speech of the head of state directly to the people.
yep,
They're concerned with the free speech of their own people. They are very concerned with their own free speech. And Angela Merkel obviously does not want to be caught in the position, or any other head of state, of not being able to talk to their people, being cut off by a private corporation over which they have no overt control, an international corporation over which jurisdiction is limited to control their behavior without nationalizing that component of that corporation, which may have to happen. So even the despots are upset and unnerved by the power of private corporations to devoice a sitting head of state. So we're going to see pushback on that. We're going to see perhaps international action on that. And very interesting times. I don't think we're going to have a boring day from here for a while. We're not going to have a boring day for a while. So I can assure the audience of that.
well, I agree, and that's one of the things that we talked about on the first show. The second show, while it lived up to all expectations, and I think we talked about certain things that were about to happen, i.e., suppression of voice, um, also other things that happened. I'm just not comfortable with putting it up, just telling everybody. This will be part two because some of the stuff we really looked far reaching on this. And you and I both know what we're talking about on this because I was talking to people today, friends of mine, and I was like, they were like, well, how long do you think this will happen? And I said, well, they're going for speech. And I said, the next thing they're going to do, and of course, Beto O'Rourke is going to be the gun czar, and you're going to see magazine, gun, all that stuff is going to happen. I wouldn't doubt if they go after flintlocks at this point because they are so paranoid.
No, flintlocks are expressly protected by the Second Amendment.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's a modern rifle, right? No, it's so hilarious to me that this is what they're doing. And anybody that owns a gun is just remember uh, uh, that's all I'll say. You don't own one. None of us do. None of us are gun owners anymore. Make sure you know that. And make sure.
Well, I lost mine in a tragic boating accident.
Same
the
here.
fact is that, and I know this to be true, and I say this as an Oklahoman, the second that federal edicts come down by executive order to strip the people of the right to bear arms, the states themselves will nullify those edicts. We will have a state nullification crisis. States will fight back. And the states, in many states, I'm not saying all the states, but we're talking about the states we know, the southern and western states. The states will have no choice. The people will demand it. Okay, it's not only about the politicians in those states, many of whom are milk toast, whatever, but the people will demand it, and there will be state nullification of gun control edicts if they come by executive order, or even if they're passed into law. You will see state nullification, and that will lead to a constitutional crisis, a standoff, a confrontation over federal monies and tax monies and so forth. We're going to see a restructuring of American government based upon the nullification that is going to happen if they institute gun control. and precedents will be set for better or worse. But we will see a restructuring of American government over what is going to happen.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's like the one state, there is one state out there that told the feds, guess what? In our state, and you can fill in the blanks, um, gun laws no longer apply to us. They're the same state that had an unlimited for a while speed limit when they said, states, you're controlling your speed limits. And that one state, it's eluding my mind because I'm an old guy, and
I believe it's Montana.
it is, and yeah, I believe it is, and it didn't matter what you owned as long as it didn't leave the state, so it didn't cross borders, and that's something that I think people aren't looking at. When you talk about nullification, that is where the sheriffs come into play.
Yep.
But you have to have a United Sheriffs Association. And the problem is, out east, you have big cities that won't go along with the small sheriff areas. And so you won't get that united front. But the sheriff is accountable to, and everybody forgets two things. They forget the sheriff, the title of it is the Shire Reeve from England. And that's the root word of it. And that was the guy who held sway over that county. In America, we also have one state that uses parish instead of county, and that's Louisiana. As long as there's a united front, and yet look at what was Soros's. What was that? It was the DA project. With his project, he has subverted every state's big cities by putting in DAs that will put out his edicts. And that's an interesting concept, and I'd love to have you run with it, brother.
Well, the sheriffs do play a role because the sheriffs are the final law in the county, and there's precedent for that. They can eject federal agents for executing unconstitutional law. The sheriffs are the elected law enforcement representative of that state, and they reflect the will of the people. They can set up posses to repel unlawful and unconstitutional intrusions by the federal government. That's happened before. It's happened in the past. Actually, we have a sheriff here in Oklahoma, the sheriff of Canadian County, who has set up a Second Amendment sanctuary county, along with many other sheriffs in Oklahoma, mainly the rural counties. And the rural areas, I'm sorry, big city folks, with all your pretensions and your, condemnations and so forth, the country folk are not giving up their firearms. It is not happening. Now, you may go on Reddit and wring your hands and gnash your teeth about this all you like, but the rural people are not giving up their firearms to the city slickers. And I really don't care what piece of paper you come along with saying they have to disarm. It's just not going to happen. So, and gun control simply will not work. The fact is, most law enforcement officers are pro Second Amendment, they're pro self-defense, and even if they aren't, even if they're willing to take a paycheck to start kicking in doors and confiscating firearms, in many of these states, they're going to meet resistance. And guess what? They're going to call in sick the next day. You know why? Because they lost half their team the previous day. It's called the blue flu. All right? They don't have to come into work. They have vacation time. All right. It's just not going to work. So, for all of their postulations about stripping the people of their right to bear arms, or whatever you want to write on a piece of paper and hand to someone, hand to a cop to serve, it's simply not going to work. And now we don't want it to come down to that at all. I do not want to get in a gunfight on American soil, but I'm also not giving up my guns. And the person who tries to serve that piece of paper to strip me of my right to own firearms is an unconstitutional actor. And I have but a duty to resist that. I don't want to shoot anyone. I want to live through this life without shooting anyone. But I am not giving up my right to self-defense in a country that is based upon that fact, where this country was started on the right to self-defense. The battles of Lexington and Concord, the beginning of the American Revolution, that happened because the British Army went to go strip the rural folks of their firearms. And they resisted and they fought back against their government. Now, I do not think it'll come to that, honestly.
I don't either.
I don't think it will.
I don't
think it will.
I don't think either of us think it'll come to that. But it's just sad to think that, you have some dude that says that he wants to take away your guns, right? And I'm not saying it's a president or anything like that. I'm saying somebody that they appoint as a czar. Now, a czar, we all know from our experiences, we had drug czars, we had this, where's the drug war right now? And they didn't stop the illegal stuff. What they did was stop people from actually exercising a natural right, which is a plant that came out of the ground. I don't smoke marijuana. You and I have talked about this offline. I think this is probably the easiest way to explain it in two ways. First, prohibition. Prohibition in the 20s with alcohol. That was wrong-headed, and it was repealed. And then we had a drug czar, and it started under one of my favorite presidents. I have several. Kennedy. I have Reagan. And I also have Trump as my other favorite. Okay? I was fortunate to have served under two of the best presidents we've ever had. That was Reagan, and it was Trump. And so I'm glad that I had that experience to see two presidents in my lifetime that actually meant and said what they did, and they all had failures and all had faults. But when I saw speech, that's more than anything else we're talking about tonight. Just like Angela Merkel was talking about. Man, you take away people's right to speak. It just makes me mad because I know where that leads. That leads to the kooks, the nuts, the whack jobs, and you know this too. When you shut off people's right to speak about anything, that leads to nothing good. Your thoughts on that, brother? I'd love to hear it.
Well, that is true. It leads to people taking desperate measures, especially in a country like the United States, which is mostly unique among the world as enjoying an absolute right to free speech that doesn't cause direct harm. And now you're cutting off. First, they walled us off into internet ghettos, and then they cut those ghettos off. And they're going to continue doing that. So you're robbing us of the right to criticize the government, of to criticize the massive electoral fraud that took place. that Biden is going to claim as a victory. You've robbed us of the election box. You've robbed us of the jury box through the corrupt judicial system, which embedded this electoral fraud. You're robbing us of the soapbox, which allows the private citizen to get up in the town square and criticize what is going on. And then you're going to attempt to rob us of the cartridge box. At some point, the people will stand up. I don't think it's going to come to a shooting war. Like I said, I believe the states, in many states, in the South and the West, not the coasts, are going to simply nullify the gun control orders, the free speech orders, all of that, the lockdown, the mask mandate. There will be standoffs between the states and the federal government, financial standoffs dealing with, tax monies paid and federal monies passed out. We're going to see that. So politics is not over. It's just going to be a very interesting time. But like I said, maybe it won't come to all of that. I will concede the election when Trump concedes the election.
Yes.
And that hasn't happened yet.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. One thing that really blows me away that you said earlier is that, yes, here's what it'll be. More than likely, all these paranoid people, the Q-bots, all these people acting stupid, I think, well, I don't think, I know, that's all COINTELPRO. It's just to make people feel this way and that way, and it actually, I believe, was voter suppressing. Oh, there's a plan. Anybody who has seen Trump's presidency, President Trump, who is still the sitting president at this time, knows he never has a plan. He just says and does what he means at that time, and owns it. That's what men do. And my channel is always devoted to men. The feminization of men has been a real thing. And telling men and women, both sexes now, how to talk, how to think, how to be. No, that's not what America is. Look, on every social media I have, I always say, I don't want the people I agree with. One person I disagreed with was able to speak her piece. God bless her, and I love her husband too. I worked with the guy, and we disagree. And she said her piece, and I said, love you. Tell your husband I said hi. And other people, and I didn't like any of their comments because we're all adults. We get to fight our own battles. If she wanted to comment, she could have commented on any of their posts, which were saying this, that, and the other against it. But that's not my job to edit. And it's not my job to criticize, because who am I? I'm nothing more than a dumb, ignorant hillbilly from a trailer park. So why would I want to nullify somebody's point of view? And that is what America is about. It's about more speech, not less speech. I wanted her voice to be heard. I want everybody's voice to be heard.
The Patriots are not arguing. Yeah, the Patriots are not arguing to limit the opposition's speech. We're fine with free speech. We want free speech. And I can't think how boring it would be if everyone agreed with each other. We should disagree. That's the American way, to disagree. But when you're using the edicts of government and big tech to limit free speech, now we have a problem. Okay, what happened to the marketplace of ideas? It's been discarded by big tech, the so-called marketplace, acting in monopoly and consort with one another to squelch the opposition, to squelch the competition, to limit free speech. That is the model, the paradigm that they're going to use. And like you said, I have no problem at all with disagreeing with someone. I do not. What we're not seeing is the liberal opposition raising a hue and a cry over the big tech censorship of the conservative patriot movement, which is happening. It can no longer be denied. That is happening. The Twitter purge, the takedown of Parler, AR15.com. Gab's been attacked, but they went to backups because they've been attacked before. This is happening. 8chan is down for however worth you attach to that, but it's still free speech. It's actually some of the freest speech on the internet. So why the attack on free speech? Why the attack on diversity of thought? And what is diversity? Diversity is difference. Okay? That's what diversity is. It's not everyone being the same. Diversity is difference and respecting each other's differences and living with them and abiding by them. That's diversity.
Hell
Not
yeah.
everyone thinking the same or being the same or having the same culture. I like different cultures. I love diversity. I like going to a different location and it being totally different from the one I live in. That is awesome. I learn more about people, about human nature, about history. I don't want the world to be the same bland shopping mall where everyone does the same thing and thinks the same thing. Diversity is difference and recognizing and praising difference, not stamping out difference, which is the paradigm we are witnessing in real time today and what we will see tomorrow. When I say tomorrow, that is not, I'm not being lyrical. No, I'm talking about tomorrow, okay? The next day, we're going to see more stepping out of diversity. So we're witnessing the great purge of free speech in this country. And we cannot abide by it.
Well,
it's not a good precedent.
It's not just can't abide by it, it's scary. That is, when we were talking about communism, I talked with a brother of mine earlier, and we had disagreements. He thought it was Marxism on the march, i.e., from the Frankfurt School. And I said the problem is it got diluted when we allowed, thanks to CCP Leiden, I never say the name of that person, and with Leiden, he got co-opted by the CCP, and yet we're about to institute, like I said earlier, Dragonfly, which was Google's baby, and that was how they rolled everybody up. And it's a funny thing. When I actually worked for the federal government, I was asked to read a book which was distasteful, and I did read that book, and I'll never forget everything I thought and felt at that time. And I think I was still in, anyways, it was called The Turner Diaries, and the first chapter is all you need to read. And don't buy it online. Don't buy this book. Don't buy this book. But the first chapter,
or order it in your mother-in-law's name.
Well, but the first chapter is all you need to see, where they do mass arrest. It's very weird. It's dystopian. And just like 1984, those two books, when you look at them and you've read them, and I don't own them. I mean, I know I own 1984, but Turner Diary, that wasn't given to me to hold. It was to read and then pass along. Because that was the narrative at that time. And they were trying to push that narrative. And you see the media run with it. It's sad. It really is sad. And
Well, I dare say more feds have read the Turner Diary than actual American citizens.
yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly, brother. And some of them bought it because they read the whole book, and it's so dystopian and stupid. I mean, this was somebody's. I say it all the time on my page. The sticky, wet, masturbational fantasy of morons. And just like, you know, these people that think they want to see Civil War or Revolutionary War. You and I both don't want to see that. Because there's real ramifications on our own home soil, really. And that's one of the things when you have to look at prosecutorial overreach that I heard on Tim Pool's show today, about all of a sudden, and it boggles my mind, they are talking about anybody, and I understand where it's coming from, a bank robber who corroborates to go in to do something. They come out and the driver's just as guilty as everybody else. Also, if you're going to burgle a house, X amount of people coming out from the burglary, the getaway driver's just as culpable, which is legit because they all had sentience that was their plan. But when you got grandma running in with her own little flag, and all of a sudden a murder happens, i.e., unfortunately, the gentleman who was a Capitol police officer, and also Babbitt, who was killed by a Cap police officer. And they say not only are they culpable, those people involved, not the Cap police officer, he'll get immunity on that, trust me. But everybody who went into that building is culpable. No, as we both know, BLM members and Antifa were identified as being the monkey wrenches going in there, and they were allowed in, they were waved in. So we have a problem there. And
the fact is, the way federal terrorism laws are structured is that if you take part in an event that results in something that is classified as a terrorist crime, all participants could be found liable. It hasn't been tested in court, but to teach people a lesson, they might try it just to scare people. And that's the thing. And we all know that BLM Antifa were the instigators in that. I mean, the fact is, President Trump had not even finished his speech by the time that people were cracking into the Capitol, which was 45 minutes away by foot. They were in two entirely different locations. He hadn't even finished a speech to his crowd before BLM and Antifa were trying to break into the Capitol and starting fights with the Capitol cops. And those people had been identified by name, by face, as BLM and Antifa instigators. Likely many of them were FBI CIs. I wouldn't doubt that at all.
I wouldn't either.
So, but yes, if Biden does swear in, he could, with Attorney General Merrick Garland, whom he's nominated, who he said he's going to nominate. And I may remind the audience that Garland Merrick was the lead cover-up artist on the Oklahoma City bombing for the Clinton White House. And I know this for a fact because one of the reasons I'm even on this show is my expertise in the Oklahoma City bombing and the film I wrote and produced, A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, which you can find on BitChute. Merrick Garland was the cover-up artist for the Oklahoma City bombing, and now Joe Biden has appointed him as, or is going to appoint him if he swears in, as the Attorney General of the United States. So I can guarantee that false flags from that moment on will be the order of the day.
And I guarantee,
order of the day.
And I guarantee,
they are on a deadline. A deadline they've been bribed to complete. That they have been compromised and blackmailed to complete, and they're not going to mess around anymore. This is going to be, they will simply false flag their agenda into action and charge those who are to oppose to it with any crime possible. And they will most likely at least make a noise, if not implement a move to charge anyone involved in the January 6th rally in D.C. with complicity with the attacks on the Capitol building. Because the way the Patriot Act defines terrorism and the way that it is structured, they could conceivably do so. And even if they do not succeed, it will demonize and scare anyone from taking part in free speech events again. So that is what we're facing.
Well, I guarantee you one thing, brother, and I mean this. The new act that the speaker and everybody already had ready, it's just like the Patriot Act. Everybody forgets who the drafter was under Rex 84 was Joseph Lydon. And he was the main drafter of that. People forget. That's why
and
Bush Jr.
The Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996,
yes,
which was already on the books, had been rejected by the Senate,
right?
Then passed as a result of the Oklahoma City bombing. Biden was one of the co-authors of that, and one of the co-authors of the Patriot Act, and now they want to install him as president.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen, people?
My point, and I agree with everything you just said, Holland. My point is, they came out with this new act that I've looked at. They want to get passed, and they probably will pass it. Not probably, they will, because now they control every house. So it'll become law. But it mirrors. This is the scary part. You know, all the lefties that, when I say lefties, I don't believe in the false left-right paradigm. It's a circle. Put your right arm out, put your left arm out, and you do the hokey pokey, but you put your fingertips together over your head. It's a circle.
Well, the more extreme they are, the more they meet in the middle.
It's a circle. And when your fingertips touch, that's where mass deaths happen. And that's the problem I'm talking about. You know, we're trying to be light and positive. My point is that it's wrong-headed, and they are now saying that anybody from the way it is a new, let me rephrase this, it is a new enabling act. Your thoughts? And that's what I think.
Well, the enabling acts were passed by Adolf Hitler in response to the burning of the Reichstag building, which was actually executed by Nazi operatives to justify the enabling acts to crack down on the opposition. This is a tried and true formula. It has not gone away. It has been used time and time again in American history, and we saw it January 6th. And January 6th actually was supposed to be a lot worse, as many of these attacks were. For example, Oklahoma City was supposed to be a lot worse. January 6th was supposed to be a lot worse. They had propane tanks stationed around the city. There's video of this. They had weapon caches, pipe sections planted around the Capitol building. There is video of this, of Trump supporters seizing hold of these weapon caches and passing them to the police, while Antifa agitators scream at them for surrendering. Men dressed in all black screaming at them, "Don't surrender, don't pass those over." And the Trump supporters saying, "No, this is not happening today. We are not doing this." Handing the weapons over to the Capitol Police because they had been planted there. Okay. This was a controlled operation. It could have been worse. They were wanting more. They were wanting bombs to go off. They wanted legislatures to be assaulted. They wanted that. They wanted more Capitol Police killed. As of yet, we're not seeing the crackdown on the BLM and Antifa agitators that have been identified by face and name as having taken part in the assault on the Capitol. And as we all know, as we've talked about before, need I less mention that any breach of the barricades on the Capitol building would have been met by maximum force, by riot control munitions, which were not unleashed upon the crowd that rushed the Capitol. They would have unleashed a Napoleonic wave of tear gas, flashbangs, and rubber bullets to stop that crowd. And this is not fanciful. We both know the security at the Capitol building, but this happened before very recently, this past summer, when BLM and Antifa showed up outside the Capitol building. They were met by hundreds of fully armed Darth Vaders, flexing their batons, waiting to crack skulls. And no action was taken against the Capitol building because it would have been foolhardy.
Not
Capitol
just that.
Police, the Metro Police, are not controlled by President Trump. They're controlled by the mayor of D.C., who is a friend of the Obamas, a Democrat.
Marianne Browser, and it's a known fact that look, everybody will talk all the shit they want, but we saw what happened, and they tried to go at the White House. Antifa did everything they could to get there. Even tried to pull down the statue of Jackson, because that was what they were doing back then. Until President Trump said, if you do that, you're going to face federal charges. Notice those statues stop falling?
Yes.
Here's the thing that I have a big issue with is statues. And it's because it doesn't matter if it's wrong or right in this nation. We have to educate our children to know what's wrong and right. And we're not doing that now for whatever reason. And I think we all know why those reasons are. It's to vilify Americans. And they went after Abe Lincoln's statue.
They have torn down like half a dozen Abe Lincoln statues.
They did tear down. I'll never forget a man who actually was a black man. They tore down his statue.
They tore down the monument to the 54th Massachusetts Infantry.
Yes, which
was the all-black regiment
infantry
for the Union side.
Yes,
and perhaps the only unit in the Union Army that was actually fighting to free the slaves.
But it makes
they tore that down. They tore down the statue of Abraham Lincoln that was put up by freed slaves. They paid for it. They commissioned the artist to put up that statue. They approved of the rendering and what the statue would be. They paid for it. And these people, if you can call them that, tore it down. They ripped down the statue put up by freed slaves to commemorate the man who had freed them from servitude. So
That would make as much sense as you and you're part Indian,
yep.
and I'm an American, and just think about the violation this would be. Okay? Just think about it this way. Just think if I'm that evil and I go there where the president's heads are there and Crazy Horse is there too.
Mm-hmm.
Indian chieftain. And
Mm-hmm.
I tried to destroy that big mountainside, or even, dude, not even that. Let's say one day you see me out there with a little pickaxe trying to bang out, I don't know, whatever's on there. I'm trying to take the horse's leg off with a pickaxe. Uh, I'm trying to do it to any part of that statue. It's just like that idiot. I'll never forget this. This happened under Clinton, if memory serves. An idiot jumped over the line in Philadelphia at the Liberty Bell and started hitting it with a hammer. You don't do that to our history. But for some reason, it's open season. And can you imagine what a weak, demented, probably not really together president will allow? And especially a vice president that has no care for history and the preservation thereof.
Well,
And
likely all of that will, if Biden swears in, all of that will stop because that was not organic. That was weaponized protest.
yep,
Okay. Most likely all of that will stop and the focus will be on so-called right-wing protests. And I can tell patriots and conservatives right now, the time for protest is over. Now, I'm not saying action. No, I'm not
right,
saying that at
right.
all.
I know that.
I'm take care of your own. But the time to go to protests is over. Stop it. The FBI just put out a warning that the Patriot movement is planning armed protests on all 50 state capitals. And I can tell you this right now, that is BS.
That's
I see no
stupid.
chatter nor buzz from the conservative Patriot side about
Yep,
armed protests.
yep,
This is going to be the FBI snitches and their snitch militias causing problems at state capitals to justify crackdown. The
yep.
time for a protest is over. Do not go. We're done. We tried. We tried to protest. We got
Just,
demonized.
yep.
We got false flagged. It's done. Time for protest is over. It's obviously it proved futile and useless regardless. Okay, it is futile.
just just love your family,
Yes,
love your life, enjoy it as much as you can,
and
and
organize politically while you can. Organize
yes,
politically, and I mean on the local level, on the
yes,
local and state level.
yes,
Screw the national level, okay?
fuck,
Because we're going to be seeing state nullification. So organize on your state level. But the
yes,
time for attending protests and waving banners and speeches is over with. It is time to organize politically on the local and state level. Forget federal. It's done. It's gone. Okay?
yeah,
There is no avenue there. Even online protest is now being, as we see, being squelched. So organize locally and politically, county-wise, in your town. Organize personally, politically, personally, family-wise, town-wise, county-wise, and state-wise, in that order.
yes.
And we can still maintain our freedom.
Love your family, love those people that you know, and all of us know. Here's the funny thing about America that nobody wants to talk about. I'll tell you this for a fact. People you and I both served with, on different levels. It didn't matter about our race. We served in the military with them. Uh, we joked around and said bad words to each other, and it was fun. We were laughing and joking. Well,
We were
no
kids.
longer, no longer can you do that, and it's sad because we've raised. Well, I didn't, but we raised a generation of people that couldn't take a joke or some razzing. I'm not talking about bullying. I'm talking about razzing. And, you know, I'll never forget the first person that I gave a fuck about as a female was a black woman. I don't give a fuck. And that woman knows who it is. And it's just stupid, man. It's just retarded. And, you know, bad words mean something. Yeah, okay, whatever, man. If it did mean something, if somebody said something at that time, that would have been a brawl, and it almost became, in my own life cycle, a brawl in a mall. Back then, we had malls where we had to go play video games in the 80s. Um, it's just retarded, man. And we have devolved as a society. It's like Dave Rubin's thing, Why I Left the Left. They're not progressive, they're regressive. And that's a problem. Your thoughts?
Yes. And we must always respect the free exchange of ideas and the free exchange of insults. I've heard many people decide to become lefties because someone said something mean to them, which was mean. What they said was mean and uncalled for. But it's not a call to restrict free speech. No, these are just the trials and tribulations one must deal with in life. Guess what? You're going to have to deal with assholes. You are. Learn to deal with assholes. Okay, there are plenty of people that I do not like and do not appreciate, but I certainly don't want them thrown in jail because they're disagreeable people. I just learn to deal with them or to disassociate from them.
You know
Or to deal
what?
with them as I can if they're friends or if they're associates or if they're family. But the fact is that this society is based upon the marketplace of ideas, and the marketplace is a battle. And some people are going to be mean sometimes, and they're going to say things to hurt your feelings. They are. This is going to happen, and you're going to get your feelings hurt. And you're just going to have to deal with it, man.
You know,
You're just going to have to deal with it.
you know what, brother? You said something that I've said numerous times on my shows, and it'll probably get us banned off this thing. Will probably, when I say it, will probably get us banned because every time I say it, it gets my shows banned, and I don't care. You said uncalled for. When I was young, there was right, there was wrong. And the other thing was it's uncalled for. Now, I'll tell you the story, and I've said it before. People need to hear it again. I'll never forget because I know what was going on in my mind when I did this. There was a kid who had lost movement of his legs, and his parents put him on a bicycle, and I did this on purpose, and I mean this. You have to understand what I did because I understand it, and I carried through to my adulthood, and I believe this. When that kid got put on the bicycle, he had no use of his legs, but the bicycle had a handlebar that had pedals, okay? This is back in the 70s. I was maybe 5 years old. Okay? And I'll never forget laughing at him and pointing at him and saying, ah! And here's what went through my mind as a 5 year old. Look at that kid, he's got to pedal with his hands, not his legs. And I meant to say that to tear him down. I know what my thought was as a 5 year old. It burns in my mind because I know what I thought. And I got a quick smack in the face, and my mother said, Jamie, that's uncalled for. And there is something called uncalled for. Was I right to point that out? Probably so. Was I wrong to point that out? Probably so. But it was uncalled for to me to voice that. And that's what that meant. It's uncalled for. And I'll never forget that smack. And what uncalled for meant. We had right, which is very right. I pointed out the kid was pedaling a bicycle with his hands. Was I wrong? Yes, because I was mocking him. But voicing it was uncalled for. And I'll never forget, that was and you brought that up. You brought that up in this show. Because you're the only person that's ever said it's uncalled for, and that is something that is in between. You can be right, you can be wrong, but in between, it's just uncalled for. Why would we do that? Why did we do that? Now, what they've taken away from us, and you can do something right, wrong, and then uncalled for, that middle ground. And yet you can still be forgiven for it. And of course I lied out loud to my mother after that hit. And I said, no, I was just saying I wish I had a bicycle that I could pedal with my arms. My mother looked at me, dude. She knew I was lying. I was a lying little cunt. And here's the funny part about that. I was forgiven. And we have lost the ability in this society at this point to forgive people for their problems. And especially a child. I mean, 5 years old. But it burns in my mind every day that I did something that was uncalled for. Your thoughts, brother?
And those lessons we learn in life. We all have things that we did that we regret in our foolishness, in our ignorance, when we hurt people. And we have to learn from that, not be penalized by the law for it, to learn from it, to learn to treat people better, to learn that there are differences, that everyone has their own cross to bear. And here's the thing, just about every stranger we run across out there is bearing a major cross of burden, because life is hard. Life is extremely hard.
Thank
Even in
God.
this day and age, in the 21st century, it's not as hard as it was 100 years ago, obviously, when every day was a struggle for survival, for comfort that was no longer there. But life is hard, and most people have hard lives. But it is the people who are leading the easiest lives, the elite, the rich, the enfranchised, the empowered, those who were blackmailed into their position, the ones who are leading the easiest lives are telling us, the common people, how to live ours. And this is not a right and left issue. This is an issue of the elites using the right and left paradigm to destroy the American dream. Small business, free speech, the Constitution, dissent. That is all being quashed by the people who lead the easiest lives. I did not have an easy life whatsoever. I still don't have an easy life. And you know what? I'm not asking for an easy life. Because as much as I could complain and bitch and moan, as much as I would not want my sons to live the life I did, as hard as it was, I'm not going to complain because it made me who I am. And I am thus far almost, not entirely, but almost satisfied in my performance. Because we all have regrets, things we could have done better, things we should have done, things that can never be undone. But that is life.
Exactly.
And we must recognize that and not subsume it and deny it by microdosing LSD all day while you're hoarding over the minions and telling them what they should think, like the elite are.
Yep. And
to escape reality.
Yep. And I'll tell you another thing that I believe. Adversity. Here's and my channel's always devoted to, about making better men. And I'm sorry, ladies, when you listen, you'll have to understand I'm a man. And
there's no ladies listening.
There will be, because especially my sisters in the military and stuff, they'll listen.
I know a few ladies who are listening.
Yeah. And the important part is, I don't know your experience as a female. So for me to talk to your experience, I can't. It's just reality. But I know as a man that with young men, adversity, and women too, it does transfer over. Adversity is the forge. It's just like when you're building a knife or a sword or whatever. It is the fire that tempers as it's being beaten out. It's what tempers that sword, knife, whatever tool. It could be a screwdriver or whatever. That is what makes that hardened. And a hardened person is what America used to turn out. I'll never forget in the 70s when I was young. I'll never forget hearing folks say in the late 70s, nothing will ever happen here. And I have to blame, I have to blame two groups. And I'm going to put myself in that same group, by the way. Everybody says the boomers. Yeah, no, I had a hard woman who raised me and my twin. And she was a good woman, by the way. But she was hard as fuck, dude. She would have fucking beat anybody's ass for her babies. And the other thing that I'll say is those men back then, they would have, right? But see, the government didn't move back then. They didn't move because they knew there was a hardened people. But they did instill in me a certain sense of things. But, and I have to blame it on my generation, including me, because maybe I didn't make my son as hard as I was. And so Gen X too, man. We all have to take the blame on this because it's fucking retarded. We allowed this to happen to our own country. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, brother, because you're a little younger than me, and I would love to hear it.
I'm a little younger, but here's the thing: life should be hard, and
Yep, always.
400-year war against the American Indian. And I say that as an American Indian. My great grandfather was a Chiricahua Apache. My great great grandfather, I'm sorry, great great grandfather was a Chiricahua Apache who rode with Geronimo. That's why I'm in Oklahoma, because his band was confined
Awesome.
to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, as prisoners of war. They weren't on a reservation; they were POWs until Geronimo died, and then they were allowed either to go back to New Mexico or stay in Oklahoma. Most of them chose to go back to New Mexico. They couldn't go to Arizona because most of them had murder warrants on them. But they went to the
Right.
Mescalero Reservation in New Mexico. My great great grandfather decided to stay here in Oklahoma and just become a regular citizen. And he married into the populace and whatever. But and that's fine. But and I respect both sides. I respect why the American Indian was fighting for their land, and I also
Yep.
respect why the Americans were forging a country of their
Yep. Are you there?
own here.
Cool.
And the Americans, the American white man, they were basically for 400 years fighting cavemen who had firearms thrust into their hands and fought back. That forged the American character. That 400-year war from 1492
Yep.
up until the early 1930s, when the last major battle of the American West was fought
Yep.
between Apaches and the 10th Cavalry, the Buffalo Soldiers.
Yep.
So that is, and I am proud of both sides of that heritage. I am proud of my Apache ancestors for standing up and fighting for their land. I'm proud of my Scotch-Irish ancestors for going up against the biggest, baddest warriors on the planet and eventually prevailing. And it forged the American character. It forged who I am. Life is hard. America was forged in hardness. And the reason we're having these problems is because we lack a frontier.
And we have a
America was
softness.
defined by having a frontier for its entire existence until the 20th century. Then the frontier evaporated and it went downhill.
Well, no,
And I don't know the solution.
I do
Maybe the
know.
new frontier is Mars. Maybe it is. I don't know. But frankly, the common people have no access to that.
I
So the
do.
new frontier perhaps is in our minds. And that's what and perhaps that's the hardest frontier of all to conquer.
No, I do know the new frontier, brother. And I'll tell you, do you remember? It wasn't Glenn Fry. It was, I can't remember the guy. He came out with a song called "The New Frontier" back in the '80s. Folks, look it up. Can't remember the guy's name. He was a musical guy. And the interesting part is the new frontier is, and this is why I think there's always predictive programming, and you know what I'm talking about, and everybody listening will know this. But that gentleman who came out with that song, um, it's space, and who came up with Space Force? It was Trump. You
The
know,
Guardians.
everybody can talk all the shit they want, but
Mm-hmm.
before there was a space program, I always give big love to Dr. Gerald Bull, uh, his artillery, and when we had Sputnik launched into space, we were going to put our own satellite into space without rockets because we didn't have the technology back then, except for Werner von Braun, who was a Nazi. We brought
Well, I
Nazis
mean,
in.
the Russians were much more successful in their early space program than we were.
Well, that's because they got the engineers and we got the scientists. But
Yeah.
and there was conversation. It's been proven now. There are conversations on both sides, and it didn't matter. My point is, um, we had Gerald Bull, who could launch an artillery piece that would put it up. And everybody will always talk about the first Gulf War. They don't know what they're talking about when they say it was over oil. No, it wasn't. You know, it was about a technology, putting satellites into space.
It was over destroying a threat
It was
to the
about
world order.
it was about putting satellites in space that we didn't control, and those satellites were up. Don't doubt me on this, because it's a fact. They said those super guns were gonna rain hell on Israel. No, they weren't. They were putting satellites in geosynchronous orbit, and that's why Gerald Bull was killed. And everybody will say what they think they know, but he was killed because of what he did. And anyway, so everything goes back. You don't have to go back. It boggles my mind. Everybody wants to go all the way back to the Rothschilds or whatever. All these conspiracy theories. No, go back 3 generations. It's basic investigative techniques. What did your grandfather do? What did your mother or father do? And what are you doing? 3 generations. That's all you got to go back. And are they honest? Are they honest brokers? Did they actually tell the truth? And that's kind of the way I handle my channel, man. Is that I know you're an honest broker. I know you tell the truth. And as long as you tell the truth, and as long as I do, that's mutual respect. And fortunately for both of us, we're doing this. This is you guys are just listening to an honest conversation that me and
The world
Holland
of
are having.
lies.
Right. Exactly. Stop the lies. Stop the fucking lies.
And the truth is what they're trying to outlaw and what they're trying to demonize and criminalize. They want truth to be told by big tech, by Jack Dorsey, a drug addict, boy toy, by the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, who doesn't pay a dime in federal income taxes, and he's the richest man in the world. He owns the Washington Post, and he benefited from the lockdown by destroying small business and having business and money funneled into his paradigm. To communist China, which is attacking Trump, overt attack on our constitutional electoral system, because he's a threat to the Chinese Communist Party. You know what? I'm tired of dealing with communists, man. Communists need to be shoveled into the dustbin of history. I'm tired of them.
Yep.
Really tired of communists.
Yep. Metaphorically shoveled into the dustbin of history. Unfortunately, where I could have said that during the Cold War, and I watched the wall fall. I'll tell you something, brother. I watched when everybody in '89, November 9th, same birthday I have. I watched them tear down that wall. Ted Koppel talked about it. on the news when the news was somewhat factual, when they just cared about the who, what, where, who, what, where, when, why, and how. When when they actually dealt in that way without a narrative, I'll never forget. I was in the Gulf War. Was it? No, it was before the Gulf War.
Sure.
I'll never forget. No, I'm talking about before the Gulf War. Um, because because at that time during the Gulf War they were talking about integrating Germany. At that time during the Gulf War, it was in Stars and Stripes. So now you know what I was trying to remember. Dude, I'm old, so I'm slow on the uptake. But the interesting part was, I was like, oh, good. You know, Germany's reunifying this, that, and the other. I didn't understand the ramifications, and I'm going to be honest on this. Uh, the EU, that was Hitler's brainchild. And everybody out there who doesn't realize that is wrong. And America, China, this was, I believe, my own opinion. None of you have to believe me. You can call me a kook, and that's okay. I'll take that title on this one. When you see that we now somebody showed a thing from his state. This is how he got his money. It was in a debit card for his little, you know, $2,000, his bribe to shut up for, you know, getting his money. We have a problem, and we need to make sure that we know, we understand the problem that's in front of us. And that's my 2 cents. Your thoughts, man?
Well, the problem in front of us is that we have a bifurcation in the government. We have the deep state versus the elected president, who is still president until he concedes, which he has not, as well he should not, because the election was stolen from him. He won in a historic landslide, most likely the biggest landslide since FDR. And I'm not kidding on that. Biden was not a competitor. He was a stooge put up by the Chinese Communist Party, enabled by the Chinese Communist Party controlled media and institutions in this country, which generate for the past generation have been allowed to fall under the sway of the Chinese Communist Party by our elected leaders. Clinton, Bush Sr. By the way, Bush Sr., after he left the head of the CIA, became ambassador to China and opened it up. And
Since
his son,
Nixon.
Bush Jr.
Yeah, since Nixon.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, Nixon, I kind of think Nixon's a good guy, but his opening up to the Red Chinese, I don't know why he did that. I have to talk to Roger about that. But anyways, generationally, we have fallen under the sway and control of the Chinese Communist Party because the China model is the model they want for the world. A controlled populace, no free speech, no free association, no religion, but the state, but the government. You can only worship the government. There is no God. God is illegal in China. Although hundreds of millions of Chinese, I guarantee, go to bed every night and say a prayer to an illegal God, that we overthrow the party that is oppressing them.
Yep.
I'm not talking smack on the Chinese people. I have been to Hong Kong. I have been to Singapore. I love the Chinese
Same here.
people.
Yeah.
They are under oppression. And the Chinese party is desperate. Desperate because Trump has messed up their game, messed up their agenda. And it's not even the Chinese Communist Party that is, the head of the pyramid.
It's
It's the
Wall
international
Street.
system,
It's
which wants to implement the Chinese system across the globe.
it's Wall Street. It's
Yes,
it's Hong Kong banks.
yes,
It's the banksters, and yet every time Hong Kong banks, is that run by anybody who has a Semitic last name? Uh, the Bank of London, uh, and Wall Street. That's the thing. They Occupy Wall Street, I think, really scared the global elites more than any of this. And then when Trump, who had the money, he had fuck you money and still does. Uh, that's a real term. And I can say that because I bodyguarded somebody one time, a female, who has a name that if I were to mention it, I won't. Uh, she was talking with somebody at a party, and I'm bodyguarding her. And I'll never forget it. I said, as I'm driving back, I said, what does fuck you money mean? She goes, about 200 million. 200 million. That's fuck you money. And I said, well, what does fuck you money mean? And she said, I can do anything I want. And I said, wow, okay, cool. What do you mean by anything? Anything I want. That's scary. So once somebody gets to about 200 million, realize they have fuck you money. And that means they don't care
100
about
million
you.
is about the time you can just stick the money in the bank and just have enough.
Keep going, brother. You're about to say what I was about to say.
Yeah, so that's FU money. Millionaires in this day and age, if you have $1 million to your name, that's almost nothing. Okay, because 60% of that goes to the federal government anyway. You have to get up to the couple hundred million mark before you have FU money, where you have enough money in the bank and interest and residuals and loans on call and credit to be able to do whatever you want with your day, and to be able to apply for the loans you need to move to higher levels. But yes, Trump does have that. But, actually, he's not even in the top tier of wealth in this country. Real estate is a shaky proposition. It's the higher levels. We're talking Bezos level, where he pays no federal tax because he can pay for, quite literally, the finest accountants on the planet to arrange his finances in a way that he pays no federal taxes. I mean, my family, I pay federal taxes, but Jeff Bezos does not. Jeff Bezos is dictating policy. Jeff Bezos is benefiting from the lockdown by having the money streamlined into his system. And Jeff Bezos is helping engineer the coup against the president. But let us not forget that today, or whenever this broadcast is spent, yesterday was the day that the executive order went into effect, confiscating all Chinese Communist Party assets in this country.
Yep,
We may
because
be seeing some very heavy stuff coming down, folks. We haven't addressed this yet because we didn't want to give away the game, but the game may be afoot.
the game is
Both of
afoot.
us here are receiving conflicting information on what the military is doing, on what is happening, on the status of the Insurrection Act. I don't know. I don't know. I've received positive affirmation from sources. I have received negative affirmation from
Yep.
sources. I do know for a fact that the National Guard in several states that I know of, and probably more, are activating on Title 10 and Title 32 activations.
Yep.
I know that there are more troops in DC right now than there are in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. I know that military flight traffic is anomalous to this time of year, is frantic, and is indicating several things could be afoot. So maybe we should close out before we get too heavy. I don't want to give away the game.
No, we'll close out on is, folks, I mean this. Um,
So,
don't believe us on anything. Look to where you want to look. Believe what you want to believe. Uh, Neither of us are the end all be all, and I guarantee you,
not
Holland.
at all. Not at all.
There you go. And we are just trying to be honest brokers. And honestly, I could be wrong all day long. We live by big boy rules, and big boy rules
I'm prepared to
means,
pay a big boy price for being
yep,
wrong or for being right. I'd rather
yep,
pay a big boy price for being right
same here.
than prepared to pay the price for being wrong.
Just like
But
Terry Yankee. Just like Terry Yankee. Terry Yankee, everybody forgets about OKC. I will never forget the hero of OKC, Oklahoma City bombing. Uh, Terry Yankee was a police officer in Oklahoma City. And honestly, before we close out, why don't you tell everybody again? You did it on the show with PSN Radio Network. Also, I have to give a shout out to WPRPN, World Pirate Radio Podcast Network, from Jeffy Ryder. I give him much love. And I'll also give much love to ACR, Alternative Current Radio, and the people involved there. And they know who they are. You've heard me talk with one of them. Not one of them, multiples of them. Because it's a loose affiliation. We try to tell the truth. We could be wrong. Just like me and Holland can be wrong. But at this point, I see more right than wrong. And Holland, please fill folks in on the biggest hero and who the biggest villain, Merrick Garland,
well,
was.
I'll tell you. Okay, and if you want to learn the story of Oklahoma City police officer Terry Yankee, I suggest you check out the documentary. And I am not making any money from this. No one is. It is out there for free. I just want people to watch it. It's a documentary I co-wrote, co-produced with many other fine people here in Oklahoma City and elsewhere. It's called A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. You can find it on BitChute. There are pirate versions on YouTube. They don't last long because YouTube nukes them as soon as they can find them. But it is on BitChute. Oklahoma City, it was entitled A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. And Officer Terry Yankee was the honor graduate of his police academy class. He was a Boy Scout. I know his family. I know the people he affected. He was a hero before the bombing. As a spokesperson for the DARE program, he was all over the state telling children about the dangers of drugs and gangs. He was also one of the largest physically officers on the police force, but he was a big teddy bear. He would let those kids crawl all over him. And they still contact me to this day. I just talked to one a couple of weeks ago who were they were mortally affected by his death. He was the first officer to respond to the bombing. He noticed many things that should not have been going on. He saved 8 lives. He was injured in the rescue efforts. And for the year after the bombing, he led the truth-seeking effort. He knew we were being lied to. He knew the official narrative was wrong. And he was murdered. He was tortured and murdered. And the details are in the documentary. But Teriyaki stands as a paladin, as an example. He led the way. He did not falter, and he paid a horrible price for trying to achieve justice for what he saw that day. But just check out A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, on BitChute. 2-hour-long documentary. Alex Jones sold it for quite a bit, and now it is up there for free, as we promised. And just check it out, because it is the story of what happened in my hometown and what me and friends here in Oklahoma City and friends elsewhere who were interested in the story finally decided to stand up and put together the resources and make the documentary and get the word out. And it stands as the largest official refutation of the official story. I welcome anyone to a debate to dispute our facts, because most of our interview witnesses are government employees, police officers.
Yep.
It was a federal building. So I welcome a debate. I welcome a lawsuit. I welcome anything anyone wants to say about what happened in my hometown. So that is my 2 cents.
I get it, brother. And folks, damn, I have a mouthful of rocks. There's a reason why Holland, I find, as a good man, besides a brother of mine, who also, his family line comes from Oklahoma. There's a continuous thing on this, and I mean this. You need to understand. His mother was like my mother. My mother was like his mother, as I said when I got a certain visit. And he was from Oklahoma and goes back many times, as well as somebody who was his mother's sister, my aunt. And they were Blackfoot Indians. And folks, you just can't. There's something I said earlier, talking with people, and you have to understand the meaning behind it. Kings tremble for men who are boyhood friends. And
Yep.
I think too many people forget why that is a serious thing. And brothers who are born in combat or born from a fraternity, a real fraternity, not where you get hazed a little bit. No, I mean where you get actually hazed hard. Look, you guys can call bullshit all day long. I was a little bitch boy going into the Army. I know where I came from. And I know how I was. Just like me telling you about uncalled for. I know the little cunt I was. But I also know I was made better by mentors. And I'm not talking mentors that were trying to groom me or some bullshit. No, they were trying to make me better. And fortunately for me, I came up in the U.S. Army first with great mentors that wanted to make me a better man. And then in the Marine Corps, I had great mentors too. And many of them, fortunately, nobody ever tried to. I did not live. I tell the truth about everything, from Paul Lind and my Uncle Opie all the way to today. Yes, I was an Eagle Scout, so was my son. That's a fact. And I was lucky enough to have served with men because I didn't have a man. There was no father for me except for somebody I used his name as my cover name. I'm telling you guys, just remember, celebrate yourself and live a good life and be happy, love, and honestly, if you want, dismiss everything we said. Honestly, I'm not trying to get into a debate. Much love to you all. And with that being said, I'm going to slowly raise the drawbridge on Kaiser's Castle as you all meander on out with your coffee, tea, soda, and adult libation as you leave my big orange couch. With that being said, shove out.